use trade, no, you don't use them, or you use them so that domestic producers can sell them.
Right, yeah. It is protecting domestic industry and domestic consumers from foreign competition. Right? And does anybody remember the 5 barriers to trade that we use? Embargo, quotas, standards, tariffs, and subsidies. Right? Good job. All right. So today we're going to look at 4 arguments in favor of domestic protection or protectionism, and then we're going to look at some of the counter arguments to those, to each of those arguments, right? So the 4 arguments for protectionism are what we call the infant industries argument, the essential industries argument, the trade cost jobs argument, and the low quality argument.
You have that great value. That's Walmart.
All right, now as I get into these, some of these slides have a lot of words. Please do not try to copy down every word that is up there. Listen to me and what I say, and try to make sense of what I say and write that down. Don't try to write down every single word that comes up on this next slide, because there's a lot of them. All right, so infant industries. What does that sound like? What's that?
It's like small starting out.
Starting out, right? Small beginning businesses. And so when companies start out, there are generally very high costs to starting a business. And so when you start a business, you haven't found ways to be efficient yet, so your prices are going to be high. And if there is a foreign competitor that does the same thing as you, that maybe has been doing it for longer or is paying their workers less than you are, they're going to be able to offer their product for sale at a lower price. And then us being good consumers, we go to the store and we see the same stuff, but it costs $1 for one and $3 for the other. What are we going to do? We're going to go for the cheaper item, right? And in this instance, the cheaper item is the foreign good. And so then what happens to that domestic industry?
It goes out of business.
Yeah, it goes out of business, right? And so the infant industries argument is that we need to protect these little infants. Right? Think about your own existence, right? From the time you were born until, for most of you, until now, how have you been protected?
Parents.
Your parents, what are they doing for you?
Taking care of us.
They're providing. What are they providing?
Food, clothing.
House, clothing, food.
Domestic items.
Right? Because how many of you guys are ready to go out and compete on your own? Some people may be, right? My uncle was born here in Elberton. When he was 15, he hopped a train and did not come back until he was in his 40s.
Where is he now?
He lives here now. But he was growing up with a very abusive father, and his mother wasn't around a whole lot, and so he decided at 15 he was full grown. He did not need the protection of his childhood home and said, "I'm out." Hopped on a train. Nope. Huh? Why didn't his mom leave? No, this is my mother's sister's husband. Right.
What?
Yeah. He was an only child. So some people, just like some industries, aren't necessarily in need of as much protection, right? But you guys ever seen anybody that still lives at home after high school or after college? Right? So some people need protection for longer periods of time than others, right? But the whole idea of the infant industries argument is that the young are not able to compete on their own, and therefore they need a little bit of extra help. So instead of forcing them out on their own to compete, right? Think about you guys being 8 years old and having to go to work. How many of you guys would have been ready to do a job when you were 8? Since you're 8, it could be something like I don't know, crawling in small spaces, maybe sticking your tiny little hands in some machinery at the granite shed. You know, because what's your specialization? You have small hands. All the other workers don't have small hands, so maybe you get your tiny little hands in that machine. So most people would say at the age of 8, you're not ready to go. What about at 15 or 16? Right? Some of you are probably ready to go. Some of you say, "No, I can do it right now. You know, I could. I got a job. I could afford. You know, I pay my car bill." But then again, not everyone is ready to go. Still in need of protection. Just like economically, some businesses still need those tariffs put against their competitors so that they're equal in price. You guys remember I told you yesterday, I think I told you yesterday, about Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson was struggling to compete with foreign motorcycle manufacturers because they were selling their motorcycles for such a lower cost than Harley Davidson could. And so Harley Davidson, though they weren't an infant industry, said, hey, we need some help here. You know, they were coming back home saying, we need you guys to protect us. We can't compete with this. And so the government institutes a tariff that raises the price of all foreign motorcycles. So the whole idea of the infant industries protectionism argument is that we need to raise the cost of foreign goods or lower the cost of domestic goods. Which one of our barriers would work to lower the cost for these infant industries? Nope. Tariffs would raise the foreign good. We're looking for what's going to lower costs on domestics. Subsidies, right? So we either give domestic companies subsidies and they can produce cheaper, or we institute tariffs on the foreign stuff to make it more expensive. Second argument is the essential industries argument, and that is simply that there are some industries, some sectors of the economy that are absolutely essential to our survival, to our well-being as a country, and therefore we cannot get rid of them. We cannot allow ourselves to let those jobs move overseas. The argument is that we need to be self-sufficient rather than efficient. What's the difference between self-sufficiency and efficiency? Which one's on here? Self-sufficiency, I can do everything on my own by myself. Right? Efficiency, what are you looking for?
Everything's the best.
Well, you're looking for the cheapest, easiest, best possible way to go about things, right? So I either can do it all myself, or I can let everybody specialize and trade and get stuff at lower cost. But what would happen if we allow, let's say, Russia to start producing fighter jets, and we start buying our stuff for the military from Russia?
They can do it.
If they put a
and we can
embargo on us,
they can make them cheaper and they can fall apart.
Right? Yeah, we would be beholden to whatever they were going to sell to us, right? And if we ended up in a war with Russia or with China or some other country, what could happen?
They could cut off
embargo.
Yeah, they could cut off our supply, and then we are in trouble. Right? And so we need to be able, the argument is we need to be able to make everything in case we have to make everything for ourselves. Because other nations could withhold those vital, those essential items, and that would cause damage to us as a country. Right, so there are some industries that are essential to our survival as a country. Can you guys think of any things that are essential?
Machine. Food.
So weapons,
Yeah.
gas, right? Gas is one of those. We like to import a lot of gas, but also, why do we import gas? So we don't use up all of our own, so that we can be self-sufficient if we need to be. Right? We will continue to buy cheap oil from the Gulf states here, as long as we can get it. And then if something happens, we still have plenty of oil ourselves that we can pull out of the ground and turn into gasoline. You guys think of anything else? What about food items?
Processed food.
Would we ever want to stop, I don't know, growing wheat and corn
And then just importing it? No, because then they taking embargo would be cheap.
right? Yeah. What happens if we start importing all of our wheat from Canada and we do something that makes Canada upset? Right? They could stop giving us wheat, right? Russia was doing some things we didn't like. We stopped exporting livestock and food items to Russia.
Now are they hungry?
Not nearly. I mean, they were able to go get it from other places. It really ended up hurting states like Georgia. Georgia exports a lot of poultry, or did export a lot of poultry to Russia, and now we're not able to. But what that means is that we were then able to send that poultry other places other than Russia, such as keeping it here, having lower chicken prices here in America. Third argument, and this is the big one, right? This is the one that you hear the most about, especially with our current president. He is big on this one. Is the idea that engaging in free trade cost us domestic jobs, right? Because if we can import items with no tariffs, no taxes, then what stops producers from moving overseas, from leaving America and going to those places with lower wage workers and then sending the products back to America? Right? So free trade means that we're going to lose jobs. Domestic firms like Honeywell here in town from a few years back, right, will close factories so that they can open factories in places where workers cost less, and then they can still ship those products to America and offer them at low prices instead of having to pay tariffs. So how many, you guys remember how many jobs are there for people who make TVs in America? There are zero, right? We used to make TVs here in America, but then we decided we could do better, we could do other things, and so we all of our TV making jobs are gone. Think about all the clothing, right? We did a whole week where you guys were identifying articles of clothing and where they came from. How many came from America?
About 6.
Yeah, like 5 or 6. There's one that should be on Hawaii that fell down, right? But 6 out of the whole week, all you guys every day, we only had 6 come out of America. So what happened to all of the American clothing manufacturing jobs?
Oh.
Where'd they end up? China, Mexico, Honduras, Dominican Republic, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Jordan, Germany, Indonesia. And Americans lost jobs. That's the, President Trump's big thing is he wants people to buy American and hire American. He wants people to buy stuff that was made in America. Why is that? Because what happens if you buy stuff made in America? It helps the U.S. economy. It puts the money back into our economy, which means that those businesses can do what? Hire more people. They can expand, right? That helps us out. And then when you hire American workers as opposed to hiring foreign workers, unemployment rate goes down, and then what also happens to aggregate demand? It's going to increase too, right? So our current president makes a strong argument for protectionism through the trade cost us jobs, right? You guys ever watch South Park and the whole "they took our jobs"? Yeah. That's the whole thing, right? Is that engaging in this trade costs jobs. And then the fourth argument is that generally things that are produced at lower cost feature cheaper materials. You guys ever bought a maybe like a case for your phone on eBay or Amazon?
And it broke in the first day.
Yeah, and by the time you use it for a week or two, it starts chipping and cracking and breaking. Every one time I bought a watch. Bought a watch off Amazon. And I thought it was pretty good. It was a nice looking watch, a little leather strap. Like it did all the things watches are supposed to do. But then after about 2 months of wearing it, what do you think started happening? Oh yeah, the watch itself quit working. The leather strap started peeling, right? Even the little things that hold the band onto the watch itself, those broke. All because they were produced with super cheap materials, right? So even though I only paid like $20 for this watch, did I end up with was that a good deal for me?
No.
No, because what am I gonna have to do now?
Buy another.
I gotta buy another watch, right? And I could probably find one for $20, but then what problem am I gonna have again? I have to buy another, and another, and another. So even though free trade allows us to find cheaper materials or cheaper products, sometimes that is at the expense of the quality of the stuff itself, right? And sometimes even these cheap products can be harmful not to consumers, but to the environment itself. And so we want to try to avoid having to purchase these low quality items. So what might we do to limit the low quality stuff? Which one of our barriers might we use? Could be tariffs. Standards more than likely, right? We don't want your cars without airbags because that's going to kill people. We don't want your cheap watches because that's going to cause people to have to spend more and more and more just to have a watch. But for each one of these arguments that we have for protectionism, there can also be counter arguments made against each one of them, right? Counter arguments made in favor of free trade. So, when it comes to those infant industries, right? How young is too young to remove those restrictions or those protections? How old is too old? Right? We talked about how some people may be ready to go out on their own at 15. Have you guys ever seen anyone who is graduated from college and moves home? Right? Or maybe not even gone to college. Maybe there's just 25 and they still live with their parents. Right? These things happen. Should there be a time in which we kick them out? Remind me of a story. So one day I was walking in my yard, and I'm just walking around, and then out of the corner of my eye, I see something like fall out of the sky and hit the ground. Oh, cool. What's that? So I'm still looking around, and see another thing. All right, that's weird. And so I go to where I see these things just kind of landed, and here comes another on the ground. You know what it was?
A rock.
A bird.
Little baby birds. Little baby birds. I'm like, oh, what is going on? I look up, and there's Mama Bird just kicking them on out. Right? Why was she doing that?
They're grown up.
It's time to go. Time to learn how to fly. Because if you never force that bird to leave the nest, is it ever going to learn how to fly? No. Chances are it's not. If it's never forced to, it won't feel the need to learn. Right? It's another reason why I'm hard on you guys.
Because if we're not forced to,
right? If everything is just fed to you and given to you, and all the answers are dropped right into your lap, do you ever learn how to struggle? Do you ever learn how to learn things? Right? And then also there's the argument that if a business is not strong enough to survive on its own, should the government continue to subsidize? Why?
Because they can, if they do and it grows and it gets better, then they can help the economy after they learn how to do their stuff.
Okay. How long do you give them to learn?
6 years.
6 years? Well, what if they're not ready in 6 years?
Give them 2 months.
All right. And 2 more years, they're still not ready.
then force them.
Cut the funds.
All right, but then you've wasted 8 to 10 years worth of money.
No, just cut it in half.
You take all their money.
Take all that sounds mighty communist of you.
Or you put somebody in the head person's place and tell them to do it themselves, and then they know what they're doing.
So you make it a state-run industry. It's also mighty communist of you. So it's not a bad idea if it works. Yeah, on paper, right? Everyone gets a 73. No one's going to struggle.
There's no actual case of
right? But yeah, it never actually works because that requires someone to gain power and then freely give it away. And very rare does that ever happen. When it comes to essential industries, how do we know what is essential?
Take an SRS.
Can't do without it?
If it's scarce.
If it's well, let's toothpaste. Is toothpaste something that we have to have?
Too much. We don't have to, we need it.
Well, what happens if you don't brush your teeth? Your teeth fall out.
That doesn't matter.
Does that sound like something that we might want to avoid? Okay, so should Should our government protect domestic toothpaste companies?
Sort of.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. What about what are some other what are some things that you guys think are essential?
Soap.
Soap. So we should
Purified water.
should we put tariffs on all foreign soap?
Oh.
Okay, so how do we protect soap as an essential industry? So we set standards for foreign soap?
Yeah.
What are those standards?
It
No
has
harsh
to be
chemicals,
soap
no
a
good.
lot.
Got to smell good, no harsh chemicals. Well, how are you going to get clean if you don't have any chemicals in there?
No harsh.
So, okay.
Suds up a lot.
So it's got to be very sudsy.
Natural compounds.
From the Dead Sea.
Okay. Like, so what is it? Soap, you got to have lye and fat, right?
No. Wow.
Have you ever seen Fight Club? It's all about making soap. All right. So, what's more important in an economy, to be self-sufficient or to be efficient? Would you guys, as consumers, be willing to pay higher prices to ensure that things are still made in America? Would you be willing to have less clothes, right? Because you got to pay more for them, just to ensure that there are American jobs for people that all they can do is sew clothes together.
No. You gotta meet in the middle.
All right, what's the middle?
Or self-sufficiency and efficiency. In the middle of it.
Okay, yeah. So what does that middle ground look like?
Essential things are made in
Have
America,
come
and
from
non-essentials are made in other places.
Okay, so what's essential? Goes back to that last question.
Everything.
Cars.
Everything's essential. So then, sounds like we got to be self-sufficient if everything's
No.
essential.
Completely essential and somewhat essential. Because clothes are essential, but don't matter what kind you have.
Are clothes essential?
Why would you want to naked?
Well, yes.
Have you ever seen or heard of Eagle's Nest? Is it Eagle's Nest? Eagles? Yeah. It's Eagle's Nest.
Well,
Y'all ever heard of that?
Sound like a new colony or something.
Here in Elbert County?
oh, wait, is it that campfire where men will go? What?
There's a place here. What are you talking
Yeah. Clothes aren't essential for them.
about? Just what do you know about?
No, funny story. When I first moved to Carlton, I was going back and forth between Carlton and Hartwell. And one night it was like 9:30, so it's dark. I'm going up the road, and I just see this flashing open sign. I'm on I think it's Pulliam Mill Road. I'm like, or this may have been Nickville, one of those. I'm like, what business is that? Like, open at 9:30. Like, it's gotta be like a bar. Like, maybe I should just stop in and see see the new territory, what's going on. And then I was like, nah, I'll check on it tomorrow. And so the next day, as I'm coming back by, I see the name of it. And so I Google it. Go, oh, good thing I did not go. Because it's a place for all naked men to hang out. But yeah, so our clothing is clothing an essential item?
Yes.
Because if clothes are an essential item, explain.
I mean, they're not that essential, like, where you don't have, they have to be made in America. Like, if countries stop giving us, stop making clothes for us, we can still make it in America, but we don't need to right now.
Okay. Yeah, so we should retain the ability
Yeah.
for most everything, not necessarily we have to continuously make these things. We should maintain the ability to make them, right? If stuff hits the fan. Okay. And then also, I mean, do our workers earn more because they're just that much better? Right? Do our workers who get $20, $30, $40 an hour, are they that much more productive than the Chinese workers who get $3, $6 an hour? They're not? So why?
We have a higher cost of living.
Okay, we've got a higher cost of living. All right. So then, should businesses be forced to pay those higher costs to workers if they can get them cheaper elsewhere?
It depends on what they need.
Okay, what would be one of the things that has to be made here? What should have to pay those high wages?
Guns.
The manufacturing of guns? Why is that?
Because we need to know that we can rely on them. If somebody like rob
Okay.
food or something.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing you would want is to show up to a gunfight with a gun that don't work. Yeah, and that was a big problem in the early days of guns, is that a lot of them would just blow up right there in your hands. What else might we want to spend on, pay that higher labor cost for? Medical equipment? Okay. Hold on one second.
You can't scratch it. Like, I mean, yeah, you can't scratch everything. It's just like. It's like, is that a half made? Yes. Off brand. Is that what's that name?
Alright. So next thing we need to talk about, and this won't take very long, and we'll get into our research stuff. We need to know about trade blocks. Right? And I did not misspell that word. Does anybody know the difference between a B-L-O-C and a B-L-O-C-K?
Block is 3D. Oh, that's fine.
Like a brick block or something.
Feel free to look it up. Have you have your computers out? More than half of you have your computers out. So you have computers just sitting on top of your desk.
The more familiar word.
BLOC is a group united for a particular purpose.
Right? So a BLOC is a group that comes together for common cause. Right? And then a BLOCK is just like a like a building block or a like football block. You're not coming past me. Right? But a BLOC are a group that comes together for common cause, and when it's a trade block, what is that common cause? To trade freely and to trade openly. Right? And so what they do is they agree to remove trade barriers, mostly tariffs, between countries or groups of countries. And so there are two views of trade blocks. Either that trade blocks are desirable because they increase global trade, which increases global wealth, or that blocks are not desirable because they are a threat to our domestic industries. So either it's good because it means we get more stuff at lower prices and increases our standard of living, or they are bad because they take away our jobs, we lose money, we're not able to buy as much stuff, we're not able to make as much stuff. It's a threat to the domestic economy. All right, and so let's look at those. Oh, come on, you guys are slow.
Did you go to Y on D?
Huh?
Blocks are not desirable because the RA threat.
They.
Yeah, no, that's what.
Wait.
Of course I know that's right.
Yeah.
Wait.
No one question.
Yeah, why would you do that? The Y is not only silent, it's invisible.
You blow my mind every day.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay, the argument that trade blocks are good is because those blocks increase trade, and trade does what?
It creates wealth.
Trade creates wealth. So trading blocks create wealth. Right? Trade blocks protect smaller countries from stronger outside forces. Think about a country like Malaysia here. Right? Malaysia, they're wanting to sell stuff to America or China. Do you think Malaysia gets to set their own prices? Or do you think they would have to, in a trade agreement with the United States or with China, you think they would have to do what the larger country says?
Probably.
Chances are they'd have to agree to whatever terms are set by that larger country, that stronger country. So what happens with trade blocks is instead of Malaysia going up against China by themselves, Malaysia teams up with all the other countries in the area, and now they do have the strength to compete with those stronger countries. And then also they help establish regional autonomy and security. You guys know what autonomy means? Auto means what?
One.
That's the other thing about an autobiography. It's the story of my first car. Right?
Conditional self-government.
Yeah. Autonomy means you rule yourself. Right? So instead of having to do what other countries want you to do, because the whole region comes together, they can then defend each other and make sure they're not having to make sure they can do what's in their best interest and not what's in the best interest of the other countries. So the European Union, right, up in Europe, gets to set their own rules for trade and not have to go with whatever the United States says is going to be the rules for trade. All right, and then there's the arguments that trade blocks are bad, is that trade blocks still allow for quotas. They still allow for subsidies. They still allow for standard restrictions. So they don't eliminate all the trade barriers. They pretty much just eliminate tariffs and quotas. Or not quotas, tariffs and embargoes, excuse me. Nothing stops countries from doing things to lower the price of domestic products in order to make them more competitive with those foreign goods. So it's not really free trade. You're not really allowing for open competition. And then also those trade blocks slow down trade because now you have to have another authority approve the trade to go through. So when Germany wants to sell razor blades to South Africa, right, if Germany were operating by itself and not a member of the European Union, they could just make that deal with South Africa, boom, just start trading. But because they're a member of a trade bloc, Germany has to go to the European Union and say, can we make this deal with South Africa for these items? And then the European Union has to approve it, has to make sure that, well, is anyone else in Europe wanting to sell razor blades to South Africa? And so it really slows down that trade. And then here are a couple of major trade blocks that you're going to want to know about. Especially the first three. NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. You guys probably already know that one. Right? Who makes that one up?
Canada, America, and Mexico.
Right. So the U.S. plus their fur hat, that is Canada, and their pants, which is Mexico. Right. EU is the European Union, right? And that is the, well, currently it's 28 countries, but one of them is negotiating a removal of themselves from the European Union, and then several countries are trying to get into the European Union. So its membership's a little bit in fluctuation right now, but it's most of the European countries.
Okay, if they don't speak this language, what is it actually called? Like,
What's that?
Asian, what do they say?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know Thai or Malaysian or they all speak different languages too. But they speak the same language of
Economy.
free trade.
But
yeah, ASEAN or ASEAN is the Association of Southeastern Asian Nations. That's the one with Malaysia and Sumatra and Vietnam and Cambodia.
Asian?
Huh?
Asian?
Technically not how it's pronounced. I want it to be pronounced that way. Because I spent the first 5 years of teaching about them pronouncing it Asian, and I was watching a video of some guy give a talk about the trade bloc, and he did not refer to it as Asian. So I was like, gummit. It just kind of ruined my day. So it's ASEAN, I think. ASEAN. OPEC, you guys might have heard of in the news. OPEC is the Organization of Petroleum Producing Countries. These are those Persian Gulf states. And then there is Mercosur, or Mercado Común del Sur, which is the Common Market of the South, if you do not speak Spanish. But yeah, we're going to learn more about the first three. Those other two are in there just because they sometimes come into the news. All right, and so we got about 30 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn you guys over to your group research. What you're going to be doing is I put each one of you into a group. I think I'm gonna have to change it a little bit because I was informed that some people are not going to be here for the next several days, which kind of sucks for them because now they're going to have to make up a quiz grade some other way. But you're all going to be in groups. You're either going to be researching one of our 5 trade barriers or one of these 3 trade blocks. So each one of them has a folder up here. And so what we'll do for the rest of today and tomorrow is you guys are just going to do the research. So I got a couple questions I want you to ask, or I want you to answer. And then you are going to produce a poster, right, that I want to look like this. Right? It doesn't necessarily have to, look like that, but what I don't want is it to look like this.
That's not the standard.
Yeah. Now this one's not terrible. All they did was answer the questions that I asked, type them up, and stick those on this piece of paper. They didn't do the kind of the putting it all together that I wanted them to do. So, here we go. Those are your groups. You guys are the green. And I still may. Somebody's gonna get moved into the ASEAN group. Because as though you may know this more than I. Is Allie coming? Allie's not here today or tomorrow, right? What about Taylor? She'll be here tomorrow. Okay. So then let's do this.
Great to use or just
I'm gonna move.
They must have a smaller class. Never mind.
Okay, so what you're going to do when you get your folder, inside of it will be this page right here. It's got on it the questions you need to go find the answers to. As you find your answers, you need to record the sources so that you can cite them. This is going to go on the back of your poster. And then I want your poster to take on this layout here. All right, but don't worry about getting to the poster today. We won't get to the poster until tomorrow. Right now, what I want you to do is just continue doing the research wherever they left off at. Some of your groups may not have done anything yet. But so you guys find your